pencils. To be more specific, blue pencils. Now these guys were all made in the same factory. They're all got the same size and the same shape, but they're slightly different in color. Now you're probably thinking, Dave, what the fuck are you talking about? You will understand shortly. But in this video, I'll leave them there because they're kind of pretty. In this video, I am looking at the GST earphone. Let's get into it. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here from Prime Audio Reviews, and here's the box for the GST. Now, if you're familiar with Chi-Fi, you might be thinking, gee, that looks kind of familiar. And yeah, it does. I was thinking the same thing too. It is practically identical to a KZ, budget KZ box, or CCA or TRN, but specifically KZ in this case, because in fact, it is an identical box, and yeah, pretty sure it's made in the same factory as the KZ earphones. But this is a budget model. It is around $18. It's a hybrid dual driver unit. It's got one dynamic driver and one balanced armature driver. Let's have a look at the earpieces now. And I tell you what, for a little budget IM, I reckon that's very pretty. Let's come in for a closer look. Okay, so there they are. Just got a GK logo on the faceplate there. Nice clear translucent transparent shells, and inside you can clearly see the driver configuration. There's the dynamic driver there, the round one, and there's a balanced armature shoved into the nozzle there. And yeah, I think that looks pretty sweet, especially considering the price around 18 bucks. But you know, as I was listening to these and wearing these, I couldn't shake the feeling that, man, I've heard something so similar to this before. And sure enough, when I pulled out the KZ ZSTX, turns out that this is pretty sure it's exactly the same earphone. Obviously the same shape, the same shell, just different colors, same driver set out inside. Everything down to the mesh cover there is exactly the same. And yeah, so where should I go with this? I was actually going to leave it at that because I've already reviewed the KZ ZSTX, but there is a very, very slight difference in the sound. And basically what it comes down to is like a 2, maybe 3 decibel difference in the lower bass or the sub bass. And although it's very slight, because of that, it does sound slightly different. Now, I don't know if that is, I don't know if that is an intentional tuning or if it's just a unit variance, because you know, these are just budget IEMs. They don't have the highest level of quality control. So it comes with your basic super budget Chi-Fi cable here, basically the same as the KZ ones or the CCA ones. So no need to look at that. Let's get right onto the sound. And in a nutshell, it basically sounds like the KZ ZSTX. But I guess not everybody watching this video has actually heard that IEM, so I'm going to break it down and tell you how this IEM sounds anyway. It has a V-shaped signature, not a heavily V-shaped, but a mild V-shaped signature, which means that the bass and the treble are elevated, leaving the mid-range in the middle slightly recessed, which is what makes that V shape. And the GST here, it has a pretty lively dynamic sound. It is not hugely V-shaped, but I'll break it down. And you know what, let's start with the treble today just for something different. Now the treble on here is, because it is a V-shaped IEM, the treble is obviously a bit forward. It is relatively smooth. It is a little uneven, but for the most part, it's fairly smooth, and most of the energy is in the lower treble. The upper treble is there. The extension is decent, it's kind of average, but I found that the decay on treble notes was particularly fast, so it kind of just trails off at the top end. Yeah, the detail retrieval is very good. They are nice and crisp in the treble. It's just not a particularly airy or sparkly sound. However, the soundstage is pretty good, and I'll get to that later if I remember. You never know with me. And let's move on to the mid-range now. And as I said, the mid-range is slightly recessed, but it's not too bad, you know. It puts the center image, like vocals, are a little bit pushed further in forward in front of you, so they're not really up close and intimate. But at the same time, the vocal density is still good. It still sounds tangible, like you could actually picture someone sitting or standing in front of you. And the mid-range, I would say it is a little on the dry side, but it's still pretty smooth. There's not really any sibilance unless there is inherent sibilance in the recording. And the tone of the mid-range vocals and instruments is pretty good. Male vocals are a little bit subdued. They're a little bit soft and in the background. They don't have a lot of texture, but female vocals are more forward and a bit more vibrant in the mix. And that leaves us finally with the bass. And yeah, you know, this is just like the ZSTX. This is a surprisingly capable IEM considering the price, you know, under 20 bucks or under $20. The bass is nice and punchy. It's got the leading edges of bass notes are a little bit blunted, so they're not sharp like this. They're a little bit thick. You get that thickness in the bass, but it's pretty quick. It doesn't sound sloppy, and it's not a boomy mid-bass. There is a little bit of bleeding into the mid-range, but it's nothing significant. Overall, the sound is pretty clean, and that really depends a lot on the quality of the bass. So the bass is pretty good. In the sub-bass or the very low bass, these can put out a really nice rumble. They'll sort of shake in your ears when the music calls for it, but if it's not in the song, you won't hear it. So the bass is actually pretty good. You got to keep in context the price when we're talking about these things. I know some people just don't agree with that. They say, oh, just talk about the audio quality. But come on, I'm not going to compare the bass of an $18 earphone with a friggin' $500 one. It's just ridiculous. It's just stupid. Let's do a couple of quick comparisons now, and we'll start with, of course, the ZSTX. Now, in a blind test, you'd be very, very pressed to hear any difference. But I can tell you there is a very slight difference, and as I said, it's in the sub-bass region, is just a little bit fuller on the GST here. And what that does, obviously it gives a little bit more oomph to the bass, but on top of that, it makes the mid-range just a little bit fuller and a little bit sweeter than the ZSTX, which is somewhat dry in the mid-range. And it also has the effect of making the treble seem smoother, although the treble, you can see in the measurements, I'll throw it up here. Although the treble is essentially the same, it just does sound a little bit smoother on the GST because it has that natural counterbalance from the elevated bass. So yeah, very, very little difference in between these. The ZSTXs can usually be found for a little bit lower price, but I think these are actually on sale at the moment. So if you're interested in either in this one and you like the look of a clear shell, go for the GST, man. It's still a good earphone despite being a blatant copy. And I shouldn't say it's a blatant copy, I just should say it is just a rebadged KZ IEM. And let's compare it now to the CVJ CSA. These are around the same price, I believe. Again, we got a very similar shape. Actually, you know what? Oh my God, it's the same shell again. Oh boy. Can you believe that, guys? Unreal. But in this case, the CSA definitely sounds markedly different. Obviously different tuning, possibly different internals. It might be a different balanced armature driver or something, but the CSA here has a much warmer sound. It has a thicker low end. The bass is maybe not as emphasized in terms of quantity, but it is a thicker, slower bass, which in turn gives it a thicker, more forward mid-range. Because the bass is sort of pulled back a little bit, the level of the bass is pulled back, that means the mid-range comes a bit forward. So you get more forward mid-range on here. And then the treble is, it's a little bit lower than it is on the GST. But again, because you've got that lowered bass, the treble jumps forward a little bit more. So you still get a mild V-shaped signature. It's a bit milder than the GST and the ZSTX. Oh man, these names. But definitely a different tonality overall. It's warmer, it's thicker, it's a little bit more romanticized. You might say a little bit more musical. Mid's a bit more forward. Okay, so that is the GK-GST. Look, despite what I've said, for under 20 bucks, this is a good earphone. This is better than most of the earbuds that you'll get bundled with your smartphone. It is not at all bad. You know, I can listen to these for a day without being angry at them. They're really quite decent for the price. So with that said, that about wraps it up for this video, guys. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, Parfam Audiophile style. And if you're new to the channel and you want to see more reviews like this in the future, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, heading towards that 5K mark. And yeah, until next time, guys, see you later.